say that there may be other signatories there to that agreement or whatever, it's not said in a way of disrespect. It's said in a way, like the name that the grandmothers gave me in my own community, was Sasa. And part of that, is that they saw in me, that when it's time to shine the light on things, that's what I do. I bring awareness and I bring, things to that. And it's not meant to be in a bad way, because that's, one of the things that they gave me as my gift. And it's a hard thing, to do. Sometimes it feels scary, and sometimes I don't like to do it. But that was one of the things I came to this, too, because as young people, we have to, be able to raise up our voice, and be able to right or wrong, if it's wrong, then guide us. And if it's right, well then, listen to, what we're bringing forward as concerns. And myself, I'll be 50 in May. I still consider myself to be a young person, and really have so much to learn. I only know the tip of it, but when I read, something like that, I went away to school and I got 2 university degrees to try to come and help our people. And so when I look to that, I feel, that this is not the right way, and it's not the right way that the government is going to ask our people. It's disrespectful, and I come from a family on both sides, who has hereditary chiefs, so I know that lineage, I know that law too. I don't know everything about it, but I know enough to feel on my prisma that that's not right. So I wanted to say that, and also that it feels good, that we're able to go around in each different room, and sit and learn, some things about the medicine, learn about the language, a bit about the language. Just to gather and meet people, and to have people, greet my young, grandson here. I know that anywhere I want to go in my nation, I'm welcome. Some people say, oh, well, this is only for leaders. I said, well, we're all leaders. He's a leader, so we're going to come here, and we're going to ask, because in our old ways, people didn't sit on the outside of the circle, so all my really sees us with these chiefs.
Wait for that. That area is right. As a leader that is part of the signing of this letter you're talking about, there is a lot of explaining to do, and that is the first step. It's educating the people. It's not an agreement, it's not anything that anybody is saying out there. It's only the first step. My next step is to educate my community, bring it to them, show them all the different things that are in there, and to talk about it. And ultimately decide, we want nothing, we want all these benefits that come from benefit sharing, whatever else I could think of, protection of the water, dealing with the water and all that. What I understand, they're trying to say it in Samasheen is trying to mix our old ways and the current ways, and it's easy to mix it up, because the Samasheen you can twist it around and make it sound any way you want, but the truth is in the language, and if you listen to the language, that's where you'll hear the truth about our laws, our protection, our rights, all those things. But I want to talk more about what happened this weekend. It was great. We're coming together. It's about the children. It's about unity. It's about listening to others, respecting others' views. I come here and that's what I do. And I bring it back, I talk it over with my community members, my elders, and my other leaders, my Secwépemc, and we'll take the good and leave the bad. I always push the language, always push the laws, the songs, and I love the songs. It's all about the children, bringing them home. And we had 4 today, but three were there, one didn't show up, and that kind of choked me up a little bit to see some children coming home. That is something that really impacted me. And I look forward to bringing more of them home, because I understand that our community has, I think, almost the highest number of children in care, and this is troubling for me. And it is a goal for me to bring that down to what I've seen in other communities where there's nobody in care. It is a challenge because of all the drugs and alcohol and the addictions and all the separation tactics and all the separation issues that are out there. You know, we face a hard challenge in trying to unify. When everything is pushing us apart, when we, you know, trying to keep us apart, the government trying to keep us apart, some of our own nations trying to keep us apart, you know, on and on and on. This is a challenge that we all have. But if you listen and learn the language, you'll see and hear the truth in the language. Good sound.
So in my hands I have the MOU that was signed, and I don't agree with it. It'll take away from the language and the culture and our inherent rights for this generation, our children, our youth, and as well as the next 7 generations to come. I understand that this signing happened recently, and at this point it needs to be null and void. So if the chiefs that signed it do not want to represent the Secwépemc Nation as a whole, as opposed to the 17 bands and the specific bands that they represent in terms of signing, then the people are going to ensure that the MOU is null and void. It's quite clear from particular behavior that some deem that it's to be okay to not consult with the people, the very thing of what the Canadian government wants to use as a tactic, dangling in front of the people of free, prior and informed consent, but that wasn't even shown to the people, and the people weren't even able to have that that right given to them. Exercise. They weren't able to exercise it. So it's just very disheartening. It's just very disheartening that within the priority topics of the MOU, Secwépemc Nation governance, A, B, child and family services jurisdiction, C, language and culture, D, lands and resources, E, other priorities as identified by the parties. We all have that already. We just need to find a way to exert our sovereignty, and that unity comes from the people. So when people are signing, and it's also within the 28 documents within the LOC, the Secwépemc, as opposed to the representatory position that they have as a chief for their own community. That is wrong. And it's very clear here. I'm making my last point. It's very clear here that when the signatory signed, it says signed on behalf of the Secwépemc Nation. So,
was that your last point? Because I can.
So I'm asking, like, what is leadership prepared to do? Are you prepared to null and void? Because I know that you ripped up the piece of paper that the people gave you, and you. You know
what? You can't be attacking people.
I'm not attacking.
That's so wrong. You were just attacking
I'm asking
him.
a question.
Don't.
I can't ask a question.
You can't attack people. He's
asked
a
a
person
question.
too.
And who are you?
I'm Teresa Williams. Okay. We've signed.
Okay.
Yes.
Pardon, you're a signatory on
I'm
here?
not a signatory, but our community is.
How about everybody
Are you
just-
going to know? Are you going to null and void? You're not going to. Are you? Any other people
We're just
that
discussing
signed?
what went on here this weekend. And
Yeah,
I think
and
we
it's
better,
also in regards to
all
child
I want to do is I want
welfare.
to honor that.
Yeah.
And I want to let these people honor that, and I think you should. As women. As women.
don't think that you have to say right now.
No.
Right
no.
now, this is,
I
let's
want to
let her
protect.
speak and finish.
Yes.
Let her
I don't
speak and
think you have
finish.
to say.
This is not the way
Our
that we conduct our
ancestors
business
can
as
see
people.
what's going on, and
Was that your last
Let her
point
speak.
then?
She's on her last.
Judy, all the chiefs are not here, so I think out of fairness and due diligence, it'd be more appropriate when we're all available. And
She
we
just
have
had 3
invited you to
points,
the table,
and then I
so,
had some papers to hand out.
I think it would be
And
really
leading
out
up
of
to
respect,
what-
especially with our elders, and it's about our children.
I think
our
that-
children in care. It's about our
It was.
children
She's
that are
actually a
coming.
children in care
I know.
returned. So
And
I think
she's
it's
also
just
not with
respectfully.
did nothing to help me get
She's
my
just-
She's on
children
her
back.
last point.
Yeah, that's all she had.
So the fact of the matter remains is that there's gatekeeping, and there's gatekeeping as being servants, and you're acting as servants to the queen. And you used in a sacrilegious manner the sacred story of the porcupine, and as well as our ancestors' response to the colonial encroachment of genocidal tactics, and that is wrong. And that is why just those 2 points alone are going to deem the agreement that you signed as null and void. So whatever monies were taken is just, it's not going to be given back, because within the clause it says you don't have to give it back. So I know that that's the concern, is the funding. And it's not going to be backs on the backs of the people now and forevermore in the 7 generations, forever and always.
I think because is this on again?
It's on.
I think because it's a circle of leadership, these young people wanted to make some comments on what's happening in our leadership. But because it is tied to the children, it is tied to the land, and we have to be able to be more transparent and accountable in all the things that we're doing. And what they're calling for is a 2-day emergency people's meeting. So they're going to call that, and they're going to ask the leadership to come and explain what we're doing. Because we have in the north the NSDQ treaty happening, because I had elders actually asking me about that as well. And I agree it's another table, another discussion, but we all are Secwépemc relatives. We need to be sharing and transparent and accountable to what we're doing. So we have NSDQ in the north, and then we have in the south, we have the letter of commitment document. And I did write a letter to the chiefs. I wrote an open letter to the Secwépemc people. What I'm trying to do is get everybody in the same room, not in separate circles, not in separate venues. We need to talk about this for our children. If this is really about our children, we're going to come in the room and talk about it. Because right now, the federal government is imposing new federal right-based policies. I already had one chief in the room when I did presentations. We need to all be in the room to have that presentation. And thank you, Roseanne, for writing that letter to invite me to do the presentation. But it's like this is happening by June, and it affects all of these agreements that you signed. That's why I spoke to Cookby Christian to ask him, say, don't do this nation-to-nation agreement, don't do this provincial agreement, because these new federal-based policies are coming down and they impact them. So he said to write a letter, so I did. And I do have a document that documents all the correspondence to date and explains stuff. And I think whenever that meeting's called by the people, we need to be attending. I will be attending and doing a presentation, and if the other chiefs can attend and also make their presentations, because our nation is being split in so many ways right now, we really need to come together to say, what are we doing? What needs to be the strategic points? I was on a conference call with the Treaty 1s to 11. I thought it was just a few chiefs and the AIA, and they're really concerned about this new federal rights-based policy. And you know, I know we're 100%. You know, we're doing the best we can for the kids here in the circle, but we also, as leaders, have to keep an eye on what's going on externally too. So this just as much impacts us as what's going on with the children and family legislation. So all we wanted to do is share the information and people to come together, not to be at separate circles or separate tables or separate whatever, because this is impacting us all. And I know the good work, and I thank everyone for all the good work this weekend for the children and the families, and especially the ones outside, like are just coming home or consulting. But we need to be properly informed, and we need to be able to talk in however it's going to be set up, but not against one another, because I always remind everybody wherever I go, it's the government that we're dealing with, not each other internally. It's the government policy that set up the treaty. It's the government policies that set up the legislation taking away our children. It's the government legislation and policy that's dividing us. So we have to put that aside, put it outside the circle, and then come in the circle and talk about who we are as Secwépemc and where we're going to go with this. Because we can't continue to follow the legislation that we spoke about that we're not going to, and then we start following again the provincial and then the federal again. So there's a lot of information there, and I'll hand out what I have, and hopefully we can continue to come together in a good way as Secwépemc people and not close out any voices, because everybody's voice is important, and especially the ones that can't speak, as this little child in the circle here. Cook Shaman, thank you.